On today's episode of Homeworthy, we're taking you inside decorator Dean Yoder's extraordinary Long Island home. Dean and his husband Jonathan completely revamped the Dutch colonial home after years of neglect and turned it into the sanctuary of their dreams. With a 30-year collection of 18th century antiquities, a surprise awaits you around every corner. Inside, you'll find a full suit of armor, a bust of Neptune made out of seashells, and everything in between. Dean's keen eye for design continues outside with gorgeous gardens, and even a pagoda-style chicken coop that transports you to another world. But first, a big thank you to June's Journey for sponsoring today's Homeworthy episode. Hi everyone, I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and thanks so much for watching today. I am excited to tell you about June's Journey, a murder mystery game that I play on my phone once my 2-year-old is in bed. One of the reasons why this game is so fun is because the decor of the mansion where the game takes place is incredible. The rooms are filled with antiques and vintage furniture, which I know you'll also appreciate. The game takes place in the 1920s and is full of glamour. June Parker is the stylish star of the game, and she's trying to solve the murder of her sister. And now I'm in this beautiful parlor, and I have to search for clues. Look how gorgeous this room is. Okay, I'm searching for the purse. Does anybody see the purse? Where's the purse? There's the lion. There's the lion. You can download June's Journey for free by clicking the link below in the description or by scanning the QR code on the screen. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Like and subscribe for more.
Hello, Homeworthy, and welcome. My name's Dean.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this is our home on the North Shore of Long Island that we've lovingly named Kippen Hill. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here. Hi, I'm Dean Yoder. I'm an interior designer, and we are in Glen Cove, New York.
And I'm Jonathan Grimm, Dean's husband, and welcome to our house.
Yeah, and this house was built in 1910, and it was actually a boarding house for women getting out of prison. And so that made it kind of an interesting buy. When we found it, it had long shag carpet, and it was bright red, and it was just everything that you'd think of an institutional type setting. And it was ugly, ugly, ugly. It scared us a little bit.
But it had a lot of wonderful original details to the house that we have tried to enhance and improve on. Yeah,
we closed on the house in 28 days. We paid cash for it. We got it for a really good deal, but it was more money than we had ever spent in our lives. And we were kind of scared of it, but we were actually really excited by it. And I think the thing that really got us going was that we looked in that back window and we saw a kitchen. We had this Lilliputian kitchen in our old house. It was like the size of, I don't know, a Cracker Jack box.
An eighth of the size of the kitchen.
Yes. And when we looked in the back window, I saw this kitchen. I said, my God, it goes on forever and ever and ever. I never saw a kitchen so big. And I think that was one of the, at that moment, we hadn't even been inside yet, and we decided we had to have it. We've been here now 15 years.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's
going on 16.
Going on 16, and we love it here. It's this is home. This is where they'll take us out, I think, feet first. We met through
a dating service that was advertised in the back of the Village Voice called Perfect Partners. And it was a telephone dating service where back in the day when you had to create a telephone voice mailbox.
This was before the internet.
Before the internet, you very discreetly left little messages back and forth. And then we finally met, and after that we dated for a number of years, and then we exchanged house keys, and I think we were into it about 3 years before we bought our first house together.
I put a little ad in saying that I love dinner parties, collecting antiques, decorating, and I could build just about anything, is what I said. Yeah. And he didn't, I left, the way it worked was you had to leave a little message on a recording. There was no video or anything like this.
So it was all done by voicemail.
Yeah, it was done by voicemail. And he ignored my first message that I said because I said I lived in Manhattan. I lived on the Upper East Side in a little apartment on the Upper East Side. And he lived out in Queens, and that was too far for him. So he ignored my ad. But a couple months later, I left another ad because he sounded perfect to me on the phone. He said he loved gardening, which was an absolute must. And he liked quiet dinner parties, and we liked just about all the same
construction,
things.
Home decorating, shopping.
Yes.
Pretty much the same things on every level.
We could tell we were a match even before we actually talked to each other. And I told a friend of mine, I said, if he's not just a dog to look at, I'll probably marry him. And I was pleasantly surprised, to say the least. Welcome to my foyer. This room was one of the first rooms Jonathan and I did 15 years ago when we moved into this house. We had lots of leftovers when we moved here from doing decorator show houses. In that same designer show house, I had gone to Newell Galleries in New York City, and everybody knows they're world famous for incredible collection of furniture. And this particular table here, it's in the Gothic style, and he had one just like it, and I fell in love with it. It was exorbitantly expensive. It was 6 figures, something beyond anything that I could ever achieve. And Jonathan went into his workshop and said, I will build it for you. And he did. He did this entire table from scratch in his workshop, including the gilding and the hand carving. He never carved anything in his life before, but he's one of those people that can actually do anything that he puts his mind to the first time he ever does it. I don't know how he does it. He's just a genius. He always says, it's monkey see, monkey do, and he's that kind of person. This is a suit of armor from it's Juan Carlos V, who was actually the King of Spain, and this is a replica, but it's what they call a wearable articulated replica. It actually bends in every joint. I've actually had it on. It's not comfortable. You get a certain feel for how horrible life must have been back then when you had to actually defend your life in one of these things. It was not a pleasant experience, let's say that. Anyway, this particular piece, we found it from a dealer down in Palm Beach, Florida, and it actually was in the middle of a divorce situation, and the guy said, I don't want her to have it, and I'm making sure that it goes to some guys who will appreciate it. So he sold it to us for a fairly reasonable price, and that's how we came by that. You know, I had a client years and years ago who was actually, we had done her foyer completely, and it was finished, and then she notified me, I'm having a feng shui specialist come and critique the work that you did. And I said, I had no idea that feng shui was part of this. Anyway, she had me go ahead and listen to her feng shui specialist, and she said, oh, you should have strength in a hallway, and you failed miserably or whatever. I can't remember. We had done like water and peace, and she was totally into this feeling of things being calm and all that. And she said, oh, you have to have strength in a foyer. So anyway, I always remembered that, and when he appeared in my life, I thought, that's strength in a foyer, it works. This is a painting that came from Jonathan's family. His father was actually a general contractor, and one of his clients was Park Benet Galleries in the city, which before it became Sotheby's. He was able to get lots of pieces at very reasonable prices because these would be things that would be passed. I've done some research, and this is a Viennese piece. It's 18th century. Jonathan's mother did not like it at all. She called him Conehead because he had this funny cone-shaped head, and she wouldn't allow it to be hung in her house. And actually, after both of his parents passed away, it was one of those things that was on offer between the two kids, his sister and he, and his sister had no interest in it, and Jonathan had always liked it, and I decided that it should go here. And actually, he's a little bit late for this suit of armor, but I think Conehead could have fit inside the suit of armor. So let me go on to the next room here. This is one of my favorite rooms. It's my living room. Some people call it a drawing room, but I'm not that pretentious, at least today. I came here to a room that was actually a white box. There wasn't a stitch of molding in here. There was nothing. It was actually just red shag carpet. There was nothing more to it than that. And I ended up coming into a room that I felt was one of the hardest rooms I would ever decorate in my life, because it had a door here, no door over there. There was no symmetry, no balance. There was a door here and one here. This wall had some symmetry. This window is much bigger than the back window, and there's not a clear way to actually exit except through that one door. So it was a strange living room. I had always wanted to collect, and I've been collecting for 30 years. Actually, my collection started when I was 16 years old. So, but we've been collecting jointly, Jonathan and myself, for about 30 years altogether. And I always wanted a French drawing room. So this is my interpretation of a French drawing room. I only have 9.5-foot ceilings here. It would have been much better if I had had much bigger ceilings, much taller. But you live with what you have and you make an intimate room out of it anyway. So what you see here, actually all the boiserie is something that I built myself. I actually did most of the work of all of it myself. We got a chop saw and some Dykes molding catalogs and put it all together. And people think that this is actually a strange detail that they keep saying, how did you do that? If you look here, this crest rail here, that was actually just out of a Ballard catalog. I did a faux gold leaf treatment, and then I added the paint over top of it. It wasn't hard to do, but people say, how many hours did it take you to paint that? There's actually a technique, and it's very easy. Anyway, the things in this room are part of a, like I said, a 30-year collection. And there's also family items in here. There's things that Jonathan and I have collected together. Actually, one of my favorite stories is right here, this desk. This Louis XVI desk was in my home state of Michigan, in Bay City, Michigan, in a terrible little thrift shop. This is actually an 18th century signed link desk, and there was not a thing in this place. It must have had probably 20,000 square feet. It was a huge place, and it had just loads and loads of junk. This is the story that I think makes this make sense. Detroit and Bay City was steering works for General Motors. And General Motors had some big executives that probably could have afforded something like this. And then the downturn of the automotive industry and the decimation of most of the major Michigan cities, this turned up inside of a thrift shop. And it was the only thing that was any good in the thrift shop. And Jonathan and I had a rented car at the time, and it was a little tiny, tiny compact, and I couldn't figure out how to get it into the car. It was one of those things where it was like dash and grab and dash. We actually took it, we stuffed it in the back of this car, we couldn't get it in, and Jonathan got his tools out and he took the trunk off the car completely and put it in the back seat. And we put it feet in first to get it in the car, and we drove away just as fast as we could because they obviously had no idea what they had. And to have a signed piece of furniture of this quality is something that I didn't think I would ever be able to afford. Well, I learned something a long time ago, and that is you can get actually the best out of people by having very beautiful things around them. I've heard so many decorators talk about how they want everybody to be comfortable in their home. I want people to be comfortable, but in a little different way. I want them to feel their very best. I want them to feel special in my home, and I want them to feel as though they're having a special experience by being here. And I get that kind of feedback all the time from my customers and clients who come here too. It's kind of like when you go to I don't know, a Ritz-Carlton hotel, or you stay in a Holiday Inn, the difference. When you go to the Ritz-Carlton, the whole experience feels incredibly special, and you feel a little bit better about yourself. And that's how I like to think of people actually coming here and feeling better about themselves because they're having an experience that they don't get very often. So that's kind of my design philosophy about kind of formality of some rooms. I had always had flowers here, and then all of a sudden a peacock, I put him here because of the color, and all of a sudden I wouldn't put flowers here ever again. This is it. So I feel like I've solved a decorating problem. It also does this strange thing where it actually separates the spaces just a little bit, which I like, because we have kind of my writing desk here, and then I have the peacock here, and it actually helps to separate the spaces just a little bit. I made a delightful seating arrangement here that's actually for 6 people, and we often have 6. Jonathan likes to keep it 8 or under for dinner parties anymore, unless we do them out in the garden. And so what I find is best is to have comfortable seating for 6 to 8 here. We have 6 really comfortable, and then I have some pull-up chairs that are able to be moved into the space, so we can actually have 8 here. I love antiquities, and it's part of what I collect personally. These are antiquities. They're things. This is actually it's a Etruscan. It's a burial ceremonial figure, and it's from the 2nd century BC. And they're not as uncommon as you might think. This particular piece, the way the burials were done was you would actually have an effigy of a person, and you'd actually, it would have the head and legs and arms, everything. It would be somewhat of a replica of that person. And you'd actually take the head part at the gravesite, and you'd snap it off the actual statue. And you'd actually take the head and you'd put it into the gravesite. This would then go home with you as a reminder of the person. These are actually not as uncommon as this is. This is the real treasure right here. It's actually a head from one of these antiquities where the heads were not. This head was saved somehow. And it's one of my favorite things in the whole house. I love this story, and I love things that are actually, this is 4th century BC. I think I said 2nd century. I have little notes inside of these things to actually keep me on track whenever I'm explaining these things to people. This is 400 BC, so 4th century.
What I found I loved the most about this property was that it came with so much land that we have the space to design and create the gardens that we always wanted to have. On a scale that's very comfortable for us for entertaining and for just doing pretty much achieving all our dreams. When we bought the property, there was a lot of things that had to be removed and things that had to be improved in the way of there were some trees that were dying off, and there was a cinder block garage that had to be removed and some driveway area that had to be removed because there was just no garden space really was really laid out here before.
I have a funny story about the garage. We both hated this garage. It was a horrible 50s cinder block garage that happened to just be built right in the middle of the backyard. It didn't make any sense at all. And Jonathan and I, we do everything ourselves. I mean, literally everything. And we went out with some sledgehammers. We don't usually look like this. We went out with sledgehammers and we started removing cinder block by cinder block. And we found the most horrible, horrible wasp nest. Oh my God. Yeah. We were stung pretty bad. And we ended up battling wasps too, with fire and all kinds of terrible things. Well, I'm married to a genius, and the guy actually can build anything. I don't know. And I have to say, we have this funny saying that my dreams are his nightmares, because he has to figure out what I'm actually saying, and he builds it. And he is the most incredible woodworker and plumber and electrician. He can do anything. We have our general contractor's license.
I do the practical side of most things.
And he actually has some pretty good taste too. I mean, there are times I think that he has no taste whatsoever.
But he picks on me on my choices sometimes. But I always look for the like I said, the more practical side of things.
Yeah, he decorates out of practicality, and I'm the impractical one with the vision.
Right. I'm more concerned about its durability and its functionality. And Dean is always looking for the aesthetic and for the beauty and the composition and the color, and I leave that to him in most cases.
We're kind of frickin' frack. We work together every day. We have for the last, we've been together 27 going on 28 years.
Right.
And we've worked together from, I think, almost the very beginning. I did have a job where I actually worked for Iris Beryl Apfeld, who she's, I think she calls herself a geriatric starlet. She really is. And I worked with her for, well, I think 5 years when I first came to New York in 1988. And she was kind of an inspiration for me. She was a very interesting person. I had never met anybody quite like Iris, and I loved her husband, Carl. What an amazing man. Just an amazing, gentle, wonderful soul, and knowledgeable. He taught me about fabrics. They both did. And there was another guy, David Velasco, that I met out in California years ago. He actually was a guy who got me interested in interior design when I was 16 years old. I bought my first antique from him at an antique show at 16. I was a kooky kid. Let's just say my poor father, I grew up Mennonite, and my part of my family is old order Amish. Anyway, to make a long story short, my poor father, we had a father-son Bible study weekend or something like that, and they had all these activities to do with your fathers. Well, there was like the football throw, there was all kinds of things like that. I sucked at all of it. And but then they had a bed making competition. I won, of course. And I feel bad for my father. He did not have the jock for the son.
Dean's still teaching you how to make the bed. and puff the pillows.
He's actually gotten very good at it in the last 27 years.
I've learned a lot from Dean on that front.
He's been a good sport, let's just say that. This is our winter living room, is how I think of this room. And then we're going to go out into our side porch, which is our summer living room. And this is where we spend most of our time this time of the year. This is my summer porch. This is a place where we have people when we are visiting. If you look around, there's kind of a theme to this. There's actually seashells everywhere. We live just less than a mile away from the ocean here. And so it behooved me to actually start to think of this as a place to put things that were related to the sea. And if you look carefully over my shoulder here, you'll see there's actually a bust of Neptune, who was done in shells that Jonathan and I made. And there's actually all kinds of sea references. In some of the pillows, if you'll see, there's shells and so forth on each of the pillows and stuff in the room. And there's a collection of seashells from the South Shore, actually, here, that we've actually done over many, many years. We go to the beach and we come home with whatever little shells and we just toss them in. This is the place you can always find Jonathan, is on this particular chaise lounge. He's always there. And whenever I can't find him, I just come out to this room and he's usually there. If you look here, you can see I actually arrange shells and stuff almost like I do florals. I actually see them as a thing to actually pay attention to and arrange like a flower design. These two, again, it's all about the same as doing a floral arrangement. I think the peacock is my greeter in the living room, and here's Zeus. And actually, I've never heard that comment before, Allison, but I think you're absolutely right. I love to have little greeters into each room. And in this room, it would be Neptune. And Jonathan and I made this from shell collection that we actually ordered them. They come from the Philippines, I think. And we actually just hot glued this all together. It was something I always wanted all my life, was to have something like this. If you see, this is actually a 19th century telescope that actually was probably on a ship. And anything to do with the sea kind of ends up in this room. It makes it a happy place for us, and it reminds me that we're right by the ocean. All right, now I want to share with you a little secret. It's a door that didn't exist, and you can't even tell it's there. Come with me, we're on our way to the family room. I'm going to show you a little secret that I have here. We used to have parties, and part of the thing that would happen in this room, I play the piano and I would play the American Songbook, and people would sit and sing around the piano with me, and then we'd want people to exit the room, and you had to go that way, and it was impossible to get people, the flow to work. So Jonathan and I sat around one day and we said, how about we build a jib door into the wall? And we did. And so we made the circulation of the whole house work. And it's right, where is it? It's right here. Welcome to my family room. This is where we spend most of our time in the winter time too, just the two of us, Jonathan and myself. And we actually watch TV behind these doors here. Hate to see a TV. I suppose all decorators say that. And there's so much in here to talk about and things that I love. This is a room that's really warm and cozy, and it departs from my Louis XV and XVI collection. We go into a much more English feeling room, except for this desk here. I always wanted a Boule desk, and I finally got one. We actually were up in Cape Cod, and we were on vacation during the summer months, and we wandered into this antique shop. There was nothing of any interest to us at all, and then I turned the corner and there was this Boule desk. This is a 19th century version of the 18th century that I so love, and I got it, and I can't believe that I own it. I have so many moments like that in my life where I can't believe that I have something that I've dreamed about my whole life, and that I've been able to acquire. One of those impulse finds that you get where you absolutely have to have it, but you buy it without knowing where the heck it's going to go, was this painting here. It's an overmantel painting, and we went into a antique shop and we found this, and we said, oh my gosh, we have to have it, but there's no place for it to go. Well, this was the only wall in the entire house that actually would have held it, and were mostly weird, awkward windows and doors in every room with very little wall space. So even though it looks a little bit oversized for the room, it's really the only place we could put it. And I think it's quite handsome here. I'm happy to have it. This also, this lamp is something that I really love and cherish. It's actually a French 19th century lamp, and it probably came from an almost regal residence. It's this single piece of glass, and very hard to do in the 19th century. This is not molded, it's actually ground and fashioned out of a much larger piece of glass. It's not blown, and it's a solid piece. And it's been polished using polishing wheels and things. This is my bar, and as I said before, I was raised in a Mennonite household, and we don't drink at all, and it was never part of our social life or function. And so what we do is I have a completely stocked bar that has everything you could ever want in it, but I don't know the first thing about making a drink. So I just point my guests over here and say, please help yourself. Everything, there's actually a little refrigerator underneath here, and they actually do their own ice and everything, and there's nothing that I need to do. And I tell them I don't even want to learn to make drinks. It's too much effort for me, and you're well capable of doing it yourself. So this is the bar. This is the breakfast room, and this is where this was another dream of mine. I grew up part of my life in California, between Michigan and California. And in California, the aesthetic there is was about 18th century country French country furnishings. And there was almost no examples of English design there. The aesthetic's very different. And I had always dreamed of having this kind of country French kitchen. And I have it. It's hard for me to believe. And one of my favorite things is this particular cabinet. I have, I collect dishes, it's terrible. But again, we use everything here. There's nothing that can't be used. And if it gets broken, we just buy something else. I'm really bad at this. I actually have I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of dishes here, but I have probably 6 more in the other room, and we use them all. We entertain like mad here. Almost every weekend we have a dinner party of some sort. We have either for people. If we're only 4, we usually have it here in the kitchen, and it's usually if it's 4, it's some people we know really well, and we're not putting on the dog for them. So I make real simple food like a stew or something like that, or a soup, something like that. But if we're putting on the dog, I have everything to do that here too. I think you'll find this interesting. These dishes here, we've actually made several china patterns ourselves, Jonathan and myself. This is one we made, which is actually all part of that seaside theme. And every dish is different. Let me get another one so you can see. But everything in every dish is something from the ocean. And because we live so close to the ocean. These were from Jonathan's family. These are all from his mother. And she got these by going to the grocery store and buying so much every month. And they would give her a plate with a certain amount of purchase. And she got enough for a service for 16. And I use those all the time. We have a lot of fundraiser dinners here for the museum that I'm the president of. And we also do things for our garden club. And we always have sit-down dinners for those things. And we do 20 to 30. And we usually do a tent out in the back for those. And we use a different set of china. And we usually use it from our own collection. We have tons of stuff here to be able to do all that stuff. This is where the magic happens. I love to cook. Jonathan does too. Jonathan does almost all the everyday cooking, and I do all the big parties and so forth. And I like to do a kind of extravagant meals that take all day long, 2 days to cook. So this particular piece here is one of my favorites. It was owned by J.P. Morgan. It has his stamp on it, JPM. And actually, if you knew, you probably don't know this, but where we live here, our train stop was actually built by J.P. Morgan. He had his own private train and a private car, and it would let him off here with his car. They would park the entire car, and this is where he was. And his house was just a few blocks from here. It's been since removed and raised. But anyway, there's things left over from his estate that we have in the house here. If you look here, this is my stove. I couldn't believe I had a stove like this when we moved in. We collected all these rocks and all the refuse that we found in the backyard. And I said to go ahead and make this, I wanted to do this backsplash that looked, primitive and country. And so these are just collected rocks out of the backyard, and Jonathan was the one who actually put this together for me. And I also needed an immersion wand so I could make soups and stuff on the stove. So I covered that particular outlet with a rock, and you don't even see it. I had a Mennonite grandmother, and when my father passed away, I was able to get, one of the few things that I got out of my father's estate was this incredible cookbook. And it was from the 1930s. And this gives a little peek into what women actually did for their families back then. It has this wonderful, incredible idea of what a Christmas dinner might be. Oyster cocktails in green pepper shells. Who would have ever eaten that? I don't know. And it also showed her how to set tables for every kind of luncheon, every formal dinner, how to have a coffee. It was kind of this amazing little thing. And it keeps my grandmother close to me. I lost her when I was 5 years old, so I remember her, but just snips and bits. And I think of her, my mother always said she was the quintessential housewife, and that she was actually the best of the best, and that she was so skilled in being able to run a household. And I think that was pretty typical of most Mennonite women. Anyway, so this is the way I kind of keep her close to me. I love this book. Now I'm going to take you into my dining room. That's where the magic happens. This is actually the room that we actually depend upon for our business, because almost every client we have ever had came from a dinner party, either directly or indirectly. So this is the money maker of the house. Welcome to the dining room. This is the place that's very special. It's a nighttime room. There the whole front of the house is really nighttime rooms. They're actually meant to be seen and viewed at night. They're very cozy. And if you look here, this actually kind of, this whole area kind of is the whole theme behind this room. It's elegant dining, meat domes, things like that. We do French service, we do Russian service here when we have clients and friends and family. And this here, I love this. This is actually an old church door. It actually was part of some big cupboard or something. We don't know exactly what's going on here, but we know it's about food. And if you look here, we call this the potato chip tree. We don't know exactly what kind of tree it is. But if you look in all these baskets, there are these little leaves, and every one of them are full of these leaves here. And if you look here on this side, this man is blessing them, and it looks like they're fermenting them somehow. And this woman is drinking out of a ewer. And so we think it's probably some kind of a alcohol making scene. There's an allegory to this, obviously. We've just never had anybody that could actually tell us exactly what this is. But we know it's an allegory about food, and it kind of goes with our room. If you look at the ceiling, we did the ceiling to Chiswick Castle in England has a ceiling much like this, and we copied this. Jonathan and I made this. And this particular light that you see here came from the Park Plaza Hotel in New York City. It was something that Jonathan's father removed from one of the hotels. He was a general contractor, and he worked at redoing some of the hotels in downtown New York. I collect continental silver. It's an 800 silver. It's not quite as pure as English silver or the French silver, which is the purest of all. This is German silver, and it's in the Rococo taste, and I just love this stuff. If you look carefully too, the backs, if you see, these forks are turned upside down, and so are the spoons, and it's because whoever had commissioned this bit of silver actually had enough money to show off that they could afford to have both sides decorated, and that was a sign of a very wealthy person. And if you look carefully, you can see that they had it initialed with their monogram, and then on the back, you see that? The back has actually been decorated as well, showing that this particular client had enough money to have both sides decorated. When you come into this room, there's always a greeter, as it was pointed out to me, and the greeter in this room is our parrot. And the room here was actually done in my two favorite colors, which are teal and green. And I did an empire stripe, and I striped this myself with just blue painter's tape and put this together. It actually marries the rooms together too, because if you see, our front entry hall is the same green, and then the living room and also our tea room, which is right off of this room, have the same colors. And this is kind of an in-between room, and I had to do something that married all the four rooms together. And so that was partially what I had done to get this to work. We are somewhat formal people, and I do enjoy the formality of things. It's a nice way to live, I think. We don't have children, and that's kind of a blessing in this kind of a home, because we don't have to worry about things being broken or anything like that. And again, we're very easy on it. Nothing matters as far as if it gets broken, we'll buy something new. There's so many things to collect in this world. So next we're going to go into our tea room. Tea is served here on the weekends only at 4 o'clock, and Saturday or Sunday, usually not both days. But this is when Dean and Jonathan are tired from working in the garden or working on a project in the house, and we want to have people over, but we don't want to have a big dinner party. We have 4 o'clock tea, and it only lasts for about 2 to 2.5 hours, and it's a wonderful way to catch up with friends and to be able to have a short visit. Well, these beautiful gates that you're looking at here are actually remnants. They're actually French gates. I actually had them in my garden in my other home, and then one day when we were just moving in here, I took a measurement, and they were exactly a perfect fit for here. If you look, there's actually a key slot in one of these. I can't remember where. Jonathan knows where it's at, but it's down below here someplace. And we noticed that it was cut right here at the bottom. So these gates were probably like 8 or 10 feet tall. But we bought them as these fragment remnants, and we love them just the way they are. And I think they work spectacularly as this entry to this special room. Inside of here, actually, this was, I always wanted Zubair wallpaper, couldn't afford it, but I actually ended up with this painted by Two Worlds out of New York City. And nice lady, I can't remember her name, they're out of business now, I believe. But they used to do several projects for me, furniture for clients and so forth over the years. And we had done so much business together back in the 90s and 2000s that one day she said, I have this. It was returned by a customer. It didn't fit their needs. Would you like to purchase it? And she offered it to me at about half the price that she would have given it to anybody else. And it's made quite the theme for this room. You know, tea is also an Asian beverage brought to us by the English. And I love collecting silver. This is all sterling. This is actually Georgian silver. And it is kind of my pride and joy. I actually have a continental service in the living room that's much bigger. But this is the one we use the most often. Most of the rooms are set up all ready to go. I have sugar in here. The biscuits are not in here. This is an Irish biscuit box, and I love the etching on it. I just think it's beautifully done. Jonathan found this at an antique shop, and I've been in love with it ever since. I just love the little masks and so forth on it, and all the chasing. Like I say, it's a lazy visit, so I actually just pop over to the pastry shop, and we'll have macaroons, and we'll have baby Napoleons, and French tarts and things like that. And I will make some cucumber sandwiches and things like that. Almost always. I'll also make egg salad as well. And we make this as a very quick little gathering place for us to share a few stories with our best friends. We're on our way upstairs to the rooms where the private life takes place. It's really not private up there, I'm just making stuff up. This painting was done by a very good friend of mine, Johnny Monteleone, and he is a very incredible painter. And he does an allegory here that actually is all about his search for a faith. He is an agnostic of sorts, and his mother was actually Catholic, and she was one of the kinds of Catholics that went to Mass 4 or 5 times a week. She's very devoted. And he painted this painting, and it's called The Known. It's about a man who has actually died. The man here that we see, he's dead. It's symbolized by the closed watch. If you look carefully, there's this pocket watch that's closed. And you see these 2 women who are holding him back. They don't want him to go. He's walking through a portal, which is actually in the shape of a headstone. And he says this is the last moment that he and his mother actually agree upon. Everything beyond this is something they disagree about. She thinks that this man's going to heaven or to a hell, and he believes that this is probably the end of all that exists in the world. And he painted this painting as a tribute to his mother and his struggle about religion, and I thought it was an amazing painting. It was given to us as a gift by him after the competition. It won an honorable mention, I believe, and Jonathan and I had done knowing the story behind it. In our workshop, we created the frame, which is the headstone. We are now at one of my favorite things in the whole house. This was something that was done during COVID, and if you see the little squirrel here and the little owl, we found a carver in Russia, of all places, and we told him what we wanted, and he did these for us. The little owl is saying good night to us when we go to bed at night, and the little squirrel greets us in the day. And they're all made out of white oak, and they were made to match even the species of wood to the original railings that were here. We also did a rampant line, which is down here lower, and symbolizing an English manor house, which this is not. We're playing games here. This is our grand illusion, is what I like to say. And here, what I have is this beautiful verdure tapestry, which is from the 17th century. It's something that I always wanted. If you looked in the living room, on the little canopy in there, there's a couple of little verdure tapestry pillows, and there's also another one on one of the tables, and then there's this one. And if you look, there's this beautiful bird, and there's a castle in the background. It's a little faded, but it's right here. There's a castle in the background. This was something that we bought online probably, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe more. Yeah, it was in our old house, so it's probably almost 20 years ago now. Just love this. One of my favorite things in the house. This room got its nickname, the Jane Austen room, from a friend of ours who's a fellow decorator, Eric Lysdahl. Every time he would stay here in this room, he'd say, I feel like I'm living in a Jane Austen book. Anyway, so we now, you know, we refer to it as a Jane Austen room. We love to pretend we're pretentious, but we're really not. This is a fabric that was actually sold to Bunny Mellon, and I was able to purchase a yard of it. I won't even tell you the price of it. It is something that most people would faint to think that they would spend that kind of money on. Anyway, I was able to get, it's actually half a yard, and I'm very lucky to have it. It's starting to fray a little bit at the edges, but I'll never change it. I can't believe that I have such a thing in my house. Most of this furniture came from a very special house here in Long Island called Knoll, and they were taking the house apart, and Christie's or Sotheby's, I don't remember, they had an auction, and we were actually at the auction. We bought the bed, we bought the chest of drawers and curio there. We bought some other pieces as well. This bed I wanted to show you. Jonathan and I did the canopy for it, and we turned these little bells. They were actually little wooden, they were little planters, and we made them into bells. And we actually decided to call this bed the Virgin Keeper, because if it shakes too much, the bells will ring. Welcome to our bedroom. This is the room where we slumber, and Jonathan and I watch TV in here. This is a special room. It has so many things that we both love, and things from both of our families. If you look, this little coronet over the bed, that was actually some draperies that I had made for a project for my family, and it ended up here in the end. This is actually a Venetian headboard. It's all water gilt. It's 18th century. It's a beautiful thing. I can't believe that I get to sleep underneath something like this every night. It makes me happy. We also have these 18th century tapestry pillows here. So the room has some of our favorite colors in it. This soft teal, it's actually really, really restful color for us. And backed by a color they say never to use in a bedroom, which is red. We have red in almost every room in this house. This is actually a piece that Jonathan made. I designed it, and actually I designed and had it, two of them made, a his and hers, for one of my clients in New York City in their master bedroom. And I said, how much extra work would it be for you to make another one for us? And he said, no, it's the same amount of work. And my husband, who didn't know how to carve a thing, carved all this. He carved all this. He carved the feet. Carved every bit of this. I had done some AutoCAD drawings of the actual piece of furniture, and then he actually built it. Very proud of him. One of the things, I used to work for Stickley Furniture many years ago. Oh, probably 20 years ago now. And actually, they are known for their beautiful drawer slides. They have 3 wooden drawer slides for every drawer, and I did 4 on these, and they work even better than the Stickley version, which was the gold standard. Jonathan's built lots of furniture for our home. One of the other things I wanted to point out too is this beautiful Charles III Georgian eagle console table, and it's really a very special piece. It's 18th century English, and it's really, I can't believe we have it. Very lucky to have it. And we have this incredible painting. It's a Willard Metcalf who was part of the American Impressionist movement here in the United States. His work hangs at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and we happen to have one of his paintings. It's a wood scene. He has other scenes that are brighter and more colorful, but this is really dark and evocative of the beautiful, beautiful upstate woods that you would find. He painted here in New York State, and I just love this painting. It makes me very happy. Well, this is my patio, and this is where we have lots of other intimate dinner parties. We have lots of dinner parties here at this house, and we have other places on the property. We have dinner parties in other kitchens as well. So here I have a little bit of Palesi Majolica, and also this is more of that set of dishes that Jonathan and I made for a show not too long ago. Again, that tropical theme, and again, we're near the water, and if you look carefully, almost everything is about the ocean here. We had a problem with this part of the house. Our watering system, we didn't have drip irrigation on everything, and so we decided we would be the lazy gardeners that we can be. We actually did all succulents and cactus up here on this part of the garden. And these are all things that need very little water. We do have a couple of espaliated apple trees, or I mean, what they call columnar apple trees here too. And we actually have those on drip so that they actually don't get neglected for water. But this was a way to start a new collection, and I think it works really beautifully to have all these succulents as part of the garden out here. This clematis is really doing something special for us today. I didn't expect it to be so in bloom. It's really beautiful. When we moved here, this is where there was actually a huge garage, right where we're standing in the middle of this fountain. And Jonathan and I rented a backhoe, and we dug out the fountain ourselves, and we laid all the cinder blocks, and we made this fountain. Come on, let's go to the greenhouse. This is our greenhouse. This is Lord and Burnham greenhouse. It actually came from a famed Whitney estate. And a friend of ours gave us a phone call and said they're going to decommission 3 of the greenhouses. You can have one as long as you provide us some insurance. And I jumped at this thought of it, and we ended up putting this in our van, one little piece at a time. It was 60 by 100 when we got it, and we actually made it much smaller so it would be something we could manage. And Jonathan and I rebuilt it here on the property about 7 years ago. And so this is something we always dreamed of having, and we have it. Again, it was 60 by 100. It's now about 20 by 25, and it's a size that we can actually manage ourselves and pay for all the heat during the winter. But one of the most magical things about this is in the wintertime when actually it's snowing and it's just awful out. We'll come out here, we have the heat up to about 75 degrees, and we're in Florida. Actually, most of the tropicals that are in the yard come back into here. This is it in its most empty state right now. And it actually is just summering over with fewer plants right now. It's much more dramatic in the winter. Next, I'm going to take you to our Asian garden. We call it an Asian garden because it's not really Japanese and it's not Chinese. It's just blank Asia. This is actually where our chickens live. Our chickens are no more, though, because they passed away during COVID. They were in their 20s. They lived to be about 20 to 25 years old, and ours got about 21. We think that's about their age. We're now in the Asian garden, and as I said before, the Asian garden is a loose-fitting term because it's neither Chinese nor Japanese. It's our interpretation of an Asian garden. This is actually the oldest tree on the property. We think it was actually placed here at the time the property was built, 1910. It's actually a boulevard cypress, and there's actually a botanical name on there which I won't bore you with. As I said before, this is where a house we built for our chickens. And chickens are actually Asian animals. We didn't know that until we did a little research. And turns out they were actually originated from the Far East. And so we had to build them a pagoda to live in. And we try and do things sort of according to Asian gardens here. If you see, this tree has been made into what they call clouds. And we trim this every year in order to be able to make it look the way it does. It's high maintenance, but it's very pretty, I think. If you look at the pagoda, we actually went to Chinatown and we actually found, this is a moon gate window. And we made this, and then we made it into a Dutch door. So it opens like this. Well, this is our white garden, and as most people know, Sissinghurst was the home of the first white garden, and this is Kippen Hill's little miniaturized version of a white garden. If you see, we have lots of Annabelle hydrangeas, and we have white-tipped hostas. Everything in this garden is white, including these wisteria that actually bloom in the springtime. Everything has a bit of a season here. There's some lilies here that are just about ready to bloom. They didn't decide to give their show yet. And these are all white lilacs that are past bloom now. This is one of our perennial beds, and we love roses. Jonathan absolutely adores roses, and these are simple knockout roses, but we found them to be the most floriferous and the most reliable rose that we can actually find. They are coming out with new varieties all the time. This yellow yarrow is a good performer for us. We've just finished up with alliums. We had some really wonderful allium displays out here. You can still see some of the seed heads, which I think are really remarkable. I love these seed heads. I don't take them off until well after they're done blooming because they're so pretty. I love the structure of them. But when they're actually in full bloom, they're these giant globes of purple. So what do I like best about the house? Well, you know what? It's a really comfortable house to entertain in. I love to have people around, much more than my husband here. He could be a loner forever, but me, I have to have people. I just am a magnet. I have to have people. And so much to his chagrin, we have people over all the time. And I just love when we have people that are willing to spend the weekend with us, stay the night. We get to cook together. We get to laugh and joke, maybe build a fire. It just makes me feel like that's the whole purpose of our home. This is a place that I share with the world. I actually have, I'm the president of a garden club, and we have 30 ladies and some gentlemen who actually come regularly to this house, and they see it as almost a place that's theirs too, and that's how I like to have them think about it. So I love this house because we get to entertain in so many different ways. Like we have,
and you get to decorate.
Yeah, we get to decorate a lot of rooms. We actually own the house next door to, which we made into our guest house. And that house, between this house and that house, we have 10 bedrooms. And between this house, I think it's like 34 rooms that we've gotten to decorate. And
you counted chairs one time. How many chairs do we have in this
I
house?
have 100. I feel like I'm confessing a sin. I have 144 chairs in this house.
So there's plenty of places to sit down.
Yes, and I collect chairs. I'm an auctioneer's dream. They have a single chair, and my hand and my paddle goes up, and I have to have one.
Thanks for watching. For more Homeworthy content, be sure to like and subscribe.